Hi, this is Brennan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog. And before I start talking about today's topic, I just want to do a quick reminder that Strange Tales of New England is available in both print and PDF. I strongly encourage people to check it out. It's a great game. It's a modern horror RPG. I'd also just like to recommend people take a look at all of our stuff on Drive-Thru and in print at Studio 2. Wandering Heroes of Overgate is probably our biggest seller, and it's the game that I like to run the most, so it gets the most support. And you can pick up Wandering Heroes of Overgate as a pay what you want PDF, but it's also available in print. Again, if you go to our website, bedrockgames.net, you'll find the links to both the prints and the PDFs. But today I want to talk about the Ronda Rousey and Gina Carano fight on Netflix. I don't normally talk about combat sports on this channel. I'm a fan, but I'm more of a casual fan these days because I don't follow it quite as much as I used to. But I used to be very involved in different martial arts, including MMA. I wasn't a competitor in MMA or anything, but I would train and spar and all that kind of stuff. So I was very interested in it. And this fight, I wasn't 100% sure if I was going to watch it because, again, I saw the Tyson fight when that aired, and that one just felt bad to watch. It just didn't. It was a really it was an awful card. It didn't make any sense. The production was bad, and there were all kinds of technical issues watching it. This one, I noticed I had a lot of technical issues. I don't know if other people did, but I was able to see the fight. It was only 17 seconds, which isn't very isn't very long, as you might know. Fights like this can be short, especially when somebody ends a fight with a submission. But I wanted to sort of talk about some of the things, because in the wake of this, some people have been saying it was fixed. A lot of people have been complaining about the card, and then some people have been defending it and saying, well, that's just what a Ronda Rousey fight is like, which is true if you're talking about her prime. A lot of fights could end in that way, but first off, I don't think that this was a fixed fight. I think that it's a perfectly reasonable conversation to have. If you follow fight sports at all, these are dirty sports. There's a lot of gambling involved in them, and there's definitely fixed fights here and there. And the tricky thing is, as a viewer, I don't think it's ever really possible to know what fight is fixed. There's like that infamous Phantom Punch with Muhammad Ali, and I've watched that a million times, and I still can't figure out if it was, if it was really a Phantom Punch or not. So I just think it's really hard to tell, because fights can go either way. There's always a striker's chance. And in a fight like this, the reason I don't think that this one was fixed is I think they would have had it go longer if they were going to fix it. I don't think that they would have it end in the first 17 seconds in that way. I think that's how Ronda Rousey wanted the fight to end. I think that's how the card was built to end, because I don't think Carano can really contend with a later generation fighter like Ronda Rousey. And Ronda Rousey, I don't think, could contend with later generation fighters after her either. But I think that I don't think it was fixed. I think it's a perfectly reasonable discussion to have. I don't think that it's wrong to talk about that and for people to debate it, because there's always room to discuss that. I grew up during the 80s and 90s where there was a lot of shady fights, you know what I mean, and a lot of shady promoters involved in fights, and just at the local level, if if you follow any of these kind of sports at the local level, or if you know people in them, there's cheating, there's fixed fights, there's things like that, and then but I think more common than that is just an intentionally mismatched fight where when people take the fight, they know who's going to win, basically. And a fight like this, I don't think it's a fraudulent fight, but I think that it was a bad card. Carano hasn't fought in like 17 years, I think they said. I remember her from back in the day, and that was a much different women's MMA than what Ronda Rousey was doing. By the time Ronda Rousey was in it, things had evolved. It's just not a good style matchup for Carano. and and age really matters, and time away from the ring really matters. There's a thing called ring rust, and you can train for a year, but until people get back in, training and being in the ring are totally different. So, overall, I don't know. I didn't really. I sort of expected it to probably end like this. I thought it was either going to end like this, or I thought somebody was going to get really hurt. And the only reason I thought why somebody might get hurt is because, again, the age of the fighters, the ring rust, and I felt like they both had a lot to prove if they were going back in there. But again, I just think Netflix really needs to stop with these novelty fights and these bad cards. They're not good for the sports. The Tyson one was... I mean, I don't fault Tyson for taking it. I don't fault Ronda Rousey or Gina Carano for taking it. They got paid a lot of money. And, these are brutal sports where you sacrifice your body. So if somebody can get a big paycheck 10 years after they retired or whatever, then fine. I have no objection to that. What I object to is Netflix putting together these spectacles on two grounds. One, it's novelty freak show stuff. They're bringing people out of retirement. They're just grabbing people solely for the names. There's a reality TV element to it with just some of the people that have been involved in these fights over the years. And the other big issue I have is safety. I think when you bring somebody out of retirement, or somebody old like Mike Tyson, or somebody like again, they're not old women by any stretch. But in terms of fighting and in terms of time away from the ring, I don't think that these are the safest cards to be building up. And no card is going to be perfectly safe. There's always the risk of injury or death in these matches. But I don't know. It just the Netflix stuff seems like a fly by night. I don't know. It just doesn't sit well with me. If they wanted to have, you can have novelty. There's a fighter. I think her name is Mona Kimura. And she stands up on one leg. It's a K1 thing, I think. It's not like MMA. But she fights on one leg. And it's entertaining. And I don't know how long that's going to last for her career. I think she's only had like 4 fights. And, we'll see. But her fights are entertaining. And so you could get a fighter like that on a card, if you wanted something that was interesting. You'd also be drawing attention to people that are actually fighting now. One of the problems is this stuff is so fragmented. It's like, and I think a lot of people don't even know where to go to watch these things. I always felt that, when I was younger, boxing used to be on TV. And I think that, and again, TV is not really a big thing anymore, but I think making it readily available is good. So if it's on Netflix, I think that would be good, because everybody's got Netflix. When there's a fight on Netflix, I will watch because it's on Netflix and it's convenient. But I think if they're going to do it, they need to do it properly. They need to have regular fights, like at least every month, but probably more than that. And I don't know. I wouldn't think it would be too difficult for them to arrange something with existing organizations. But yeah, again, on the Ronda Rousey fight, I don't fault the fighters. And I don't think it was fixed, but I think it was a bad card. I don't think that Gina Carano is capable of contending with a grappler as sophisticated as Ronda Rousey. I know a lot of people dismiss Ronda Rousey because her striking game had so many holes, and that was exposed later in her career. But because it was pretty clear she was going to make this a grappling match, and Carano probably didn't have the defenses for that. It's very difficult if you don't know how to like deal with a grappler. Everything is backwards, and I don't know how much time she had to prepare, but I'm telling you, like, a year is not enough time to prepare for an Olympic level judo person. It's just not. You can train for years and years in Brazilian jiu-jitsu or judo, and you still feel like a baby. So, and again, I have very minimal training in that. I did about 6 months of judo, which I picked up pretty well. Like, judo I liked. And I was at a couple of different gyms over the course of about 3 years. I did about 3 years of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in addition to other things I was doing at these gyms. And if you don't give it the attention and focus, you can invest that amount of time. And I don't know a thing about Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Like I know, like I can follow it when I watch it. I understand the moves and stuff like that, but I never got very good at it. And part of that is just I'm just not, my mind's not built for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And part of it is that I find it very tiring and dull, because and that it's not an attack on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It's just that it's a really difficult style to learn, because it like striking. I mean, how can I put it? Like there's such a thing as a smart fighter and striking, and it takes intelligence, but it takes a whole other kind of intelligence, I think, to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to me always felt like algebra or something. And judo is similar in a lot of ways. So I just don't think that I don't think that she would have had enough time to get up to speed on the grappling for a fight like this. And again, so 17 seconds, that's kind of what happens when you have a mismatched card. So I am happy that nobody was hurt. Like if it was mismatched, because mismatches are what cause people to die. That's why I'm very concerned about the mismatched cards. When you have skill levels that are not roughly equal or close to equal, that's when you get somebody who just gets tooled on and they end up getting a brain bleed or something. That's the other issue too. The older you get, the less you can handle getting punched in the head and all these different things, and you're more likely to get those kinds of outcomes. So I just don't think that. I think people are being very reckless here. I understand it's a combat sport. These are people who are supposed to be, you're saying in quotes, warriors. I kind of think that's BS. I've done this stuff myself. I come from a family of this. Like my grandfather and all his brothers were boxers, both pro and amateur. And yeah, there's such a thing as a person being a fighter deep in their soul, but part of that also means they're going to do we have to have things in place to prevent them from being too reckless. And so a fighter is likely to take a fight that they're way outmatched for sometimes. And if you've ever seen anybody die in a boxing match or anything, I haven't seen it in real life, but I've seen it on TV and on YouTube. It's really horrible. You don't want to watch that. And the thing that people don't understand is one of the reasons why boxing faded was because of the deaths in the ring. And so that really hurts a sport's traction with the public. Even if there's like a hardcore fan base that can weather that, you're not going to grow the sport if people are dying and people are getting seriously injured. And again, if people question that, I would encourage them to go. If there's been a number of fights in the past several years where fighters have died shortly after the fight, especially in boxing, go look at those fights, because I don't think people understand what it looks like when a fighter's in danger. They don't understand. It's not readily apparent to the casual viewer, I think. So again, I didn't mean to rant this long. But that was just my thoughts. If people disagree with me, that's fine. I want to hear different points of view on this. I was like half on the fence about watching it anyways. Like I had to go pick up my wife, and I was like, well, if I get home before they go on, I'll watch it. That was kind of my attitude, because I knew it was going to be bullshit. And again, I don't think it was fixed, but I do think that card was pretty rotten from the get-go. And I'm glad that they feel happy about the outcome of that fight. I could tell that they were both very pleased. I can see that Gina Carano is in much better shape than she was before. That's wonderful. But I don't think that taking a fight like this and ending a fight like this is gonna like fix Ronda Rousey's later career. And that's not taking anything away from her. She changed MMA. I think she has a lot that she can already sort of rest her laurels on. But I mean, her career ended the way it ended, and I don't think this fight is going to change that. And that's just the way it is. It's not anything against her. It's just that the sport is, somebody wins, somebody loses, and nobody's so good that they can't be beat. And everybody has weaknesses in their game, and once those start getting exposed, you know what I mean. So it's, So again, we'll see. I don't know if people want to hear me talking about this stuff that much, but every once in a while I get worked up about this kind of an event. And I apologize, I'm coughing here. So I'll let you go, and I will talk to you later.